Welcome in, everyone, to Scoop du Jour. Today, we're getting the scoop with Kate Scott, 76ers play-by-play broadcaster. Hello, welcome. I'm so grateful to have you here. And I have admired you from afar. I was lucky enough to meet you at our National Sports Media Association. Somebody's giving us a cheer in the background.
Look at Piper. I told you like a minute ago, Jourdan, I told you the dog is here, but she's been quiet all morning. Sweetheart, we're starting recording. Can you lay back down? Okay, thank you. As you were saying, Jourdan.
That was like our little introduction, like, hello, welcome. You know, I have music in the beginning, but I needed, some kind of fun.
Yeah, you needed something
Piper,
extra. So
thank you for that, Piper. But without further ado, I would like to read your mom's notes that I have, because your mom is quite it has quite the amazing resume. It might take me a minute, but Kate, so many amazing things. You, like I said, are the play-by-play for the Philadelphia 76ers, but before that, and besides that, you were the first full-time female broadcaster in the city of Philly, first woman to be primary play-by-play for an NBA team, second female named to a full-time play-by-play NBA announcer position. In 2016, the first woman to call an NFL game on the radio. 2017, first woman to call football for Pac-12 networks. 2020, first ever all-women's broadcast crew for an NFL game. In 2020, first play-by-play woman to call an Olympic men's basketball game. And in 2021, first woman to call a Warriors game. Maybe the first to do play-by-play of an NBA game on the radio. I know there are so many more things, but that is an incredible resume. I don't even know where to begin, but has that sunk into you yet? How much does all of that mean to you?
Well, it has finally sunk in, and it means it's about damn time, because there's been so many women who have come before me, who were ready to call those games, but weren't given the opportunity, Jourdan. So, whenever I'm in firsts like that, and hopefully there won't be too many more. That was one of the things my mom said to me after I got the Sixers gig last year. She said, I hope, Kate, that this is the last first that you accomplish, because hopefully what you and Lisa and so many others are doing have opened the doors wide enough now that other people who are qualified get these opportunities, and not just you. And that's something I think about all the time, because there have been so many qualified women who, for whatever reason, weren't given the opportunity. There wasn't the visibility 20 years ago that there is now because of social media that has made the world smaller. And now, hopefully, young women like you who want to get into this industry, unlike me 20 years ago, I didn't know I could do this. So I didn't get the play-by-play reps and all the things that were necessary to be prepared for this earlier in my career. But I talked to so many young people like you who now see us doing this and realize that you can. So you're going to college and training earlier than I did to be a play-by-play announcer. So those are kind of the things I think about when I think about all the firsts. Yes, they were obviously incredibly important in helping me get to where I am today. But I actually think about everybody else that hopefully they're making proud. Hopefully they're opening doors for, and hopefully pretty soon we'll get to stop talking about the firsts and just talk about the qualified people who are getting the opportunity.
That is so cool. And it kind of gives me goosebumps, because eventually it's not going to be a big deal, but it is right now. Mm-hmm. I did read that you didn't know you could do this, and maybe it wasn't something that you always knew or wanted to do, because like you said, you didn't see people like you doing it. In college, did I read that you wanted to be a teacher, and someone kind of pushed you in that way? When did you realize this was for you?
Yeah, actually, it was junior year of high school, and I vividly remember I was walking to the administration office at Clovis High School. I grew up in the Central Valley of California, and Mr. Schmazel, our activities director, I was the commissioner of spirit at that time, which was pretty much just a fun name for the person who was on the microphone at our rallies, was on the microphone at Friday night football games, leading cheers. And I was turning in, I think, some college applications of some sort, something for college. And he said, Kate, what are you going to go to college for? And I said, well, Mr. Schmuzzle, I think I'm going to be a teacher. My mom's a special education teacher. A lot of my friends are going into teaching. It just seems like a great way to impact the next generation. And he said, well, Kate, I completely agree with you. Obviously, I've made teaching and being involved in kids' lives my career, and I absolutely love it. And you can make an impact. But I just want to point something out to you. And that's what he said. You're on the microphone at our Friday night football games. You're our PA announcer for men's soccer. You're the editor of sports for our high school newspaper. You play for varsity sports. You play travel soccer. Like, let's put this all in a little box and show you what you could do. But truly, before we had that conversation, I hadn't thought about it because there were so few women on my television having any role in sports broadcasting. Linda Cohn and Robin Roberts were the couple of Sports Center anchors that I saw back in the day. Michelle Tafoya, Bonnie Bernstein, Hannah Storm, Susie Colbert, those names that have become just huge names in sports broadcasting now. Leslie Visser, Andrea Kramer. I was seeing them occasionally, but not as often as you see women on sports television now. So I didn't think that this was something I could do. Also because they were way prettier than me and they knew how to do their hair and makeup, things I still struggle with. But there was just, I didn't see myself as that. So it wasn't until I had that conversation, and thankfully then I went to Cal, UC Berkeley, and majored in communications. But again, still didn't know that I could do play-by-play until after I graduated, because there were so few women, to my knowledge, doing it at that time. Now, in retrospect, I've come to realize that there was a lot more women, but social media didn't come into existence until I was Facebook didn't exist until I was a junior in college. That shows you how old I am. So this kind of instant access to the world that we have now, Jourdan, didn't exist when I was in college. So you didn't know what was going on the other side of the country. So yeah, it's been a wild journey.
I like that the social media didn't exist, because that was probably a nice thing.
It was amazing. I feel so bad for all of you kids who have to go through college worried about every single thing you do, and athletes these days having to worry about every single thing they do. So it's crazy to think that it was a different world just 20 years ago, but it was.
It really was. And 20 years ago, like you said, you didn't know you could do this until after you graduated. And after you graduated, you grinded. There's no better way to put it. Walk me
Yeah.
through some of the things, many of the things that you did right after school, and how you kind of got by to get where you are.
Yeah, that's, I actually was just texting another youngster in the industry. I call you all my kiddos, who is understandably frustrated because, just like me, she's been out of school for a few years now and thinks she should be on ESPN or Fox or NBC. I remember those feelings and that frustration. And I texted her, you're doing the right thing. You're doing great work. You're improving every time that we talk to one another. And just remember, if you keep it that, people are eventually going to recognize and realize what you are and what you can bring to their broadcast or their team. Just remember, I started as a radio traffic broadcaster or a radio traffic producer. And they texted back and said, thanks, I needed that. But that's where I started, Jourdan. I didn't even start in sports. I did 4 internships. Again, I wrote for college blogs and magazines and did a highlight show in college. And I thought, okay, ESPN, here I come. And yeah, no, I mean, I'm 39 now and I still haven't called a game for ESPN, but it's worked out okay. But my first job after college was producing radio traffic. And thanks to my mentors, who, when this kid who thought I was going to go right into a sports job out of school said, just get your foot in the door, Kate. Just get your foot in the door. I know it sounds crazy. I know you can't see it right now that radio traffic producing will ever lead to what you want to do, but it is a very small industry. So just get your foot in the door. So did that for a couple of years. Again, not even on air, but just learning how to read code from accidents on highways, thinking to myself, what am I doing with my life while all my friends are out having fun on Friday nights in San Francisco and I'm typing in road work so somebody in a closet studio next to me can read about it. And then after a couple years, I had told people that I wanted to be on air, so they started training me how to be on air, and then I started doing that. Then I started doing news on the radio. People knew I really wanted to get into sports. The sports guys, though, never take days off because they know what a great gig they have. But
Yeah.
eventually got to start filling in on Thanksgiving and Christmas, the few days that the sports guys didn't want to do sports updates, and started from that, able to put a little reel together, then started sending that reel out to sports stations all across the country. So it was a grind. And then once I got my first sports radio gig, thankfully, somehow in San Francisco, which is where I was living at the time and working, and it was for the station I grew up listening to. I did a ton of other things during that time as well. I was the sideline reporter for the San Jose Giants, the minor league baseball team for the Major League Giants. I did 3 years of sideline for the San Jose Earthquakes, the MLS team in the Bay Area. I was hosting Cal's post-game football show on the radio on Saturdays. On the Saturdays I wasn't doing that, I was anchoring sports for NBC Sports in the Bay Area. I was sleeping in my car sometimes in between my radio shift, which was in the morning, and then going to do sideline. So that's what I try to get across to kids. I understand how much you want to be at your dream, but it took me almost 16 years, 17, 18 years to get here now in Philadelphia. And I had to, like you said, grind and work my tail off. And it was really confusing and really frustrating at times, but it's an amazing industry, right? Now I'm getting paid to call Sixers games, things that I would want to pay to go to, and instead I'm getting paid to be there calling the games. And you have to think how many other people would love to do this and how difficult it is to get here as a result. So yeah, it's been a grind, but it's been a journey I wouldn't trade for the world.
And how cool that you have the perspective that you didn't just get there, right? It's amazing for so many people who do, but that you did have to put in the work. And I'm sure no one wants to sleep in their car and work all of these jobs and try to figure out, can I buy
Yeah,
this thing? But you have this perspective of, I made it because I worked
yeah.
really, really hard to do this. I read that when you received the call from the Sixers, you thought it was a courtesy call. Take me
Mhm.
back to that day.
Yeah, it was a little over a year ago now. I think mid-September of 2021, and my life had already undergone such huge change last year. I mean, went from the highest of highs. The past 2 years have been just, I know, a wild journey for so many people. But call the NHL game for NBC in March of 2020, less than a week before the world shuts down because of the pandemic. And all of us who were part of that broadcast often think how different our lives would be if it had been the week after. And we wouldn't have gotten to call that game because I know that that game um, made me even more of a recognizable national name than I was. Because now living on the East Coast, I completely understand. I mean, a lot of the games on the West Coast that I was calling, they're after everybody here goes to bed. So East Coast
Yeah.
bias is real for some people, but it's also they just have to be able to function the next day at work.
Right, right.
That was a huge step for my career. But then the world shut down, and then my main employer, the Pac-12 network, was the one conference that decided not to play football in the fall of 2020, and because of that, I had to scramble and figure out, am I even going to be able to stay in this industry because I have a mortgage to pay in the Bay Area. Went back into sports radio with 95.7 The Game. It just happened that they were looking to launch a new morning show. So after all these years of working really hard to become a play-by-play announcer, I thought that aspect of my career might be over. So I went back to morning radio, waking up at 4 in the morning to do a show at 6 in the morning, and was doing that in early 2021 when all of a sudden the Warriors asked me to call a game for them. We were the Warriors radio flagship, and they wanted to do something similar to what NBC had done on International Women's Day the year before. Then out of the blue, Fox calls and asks if I want to call international soccer for them for the first time, which is something I had been dreaming about, and got to call Copa American Gold Cup matches. But I was doing that while I was hosting a morning radio show, which again, talk about trying to sleep with you can and too much prep. And then got the call to call the Olympics in the summer, which was another dream come true for me. And then so then all of a sudden I thought my career was over, and then all these incredible things are piling up. And it was incredibly stressful. And I get a call from Learfield Radio that they're launching this new college football Saturday night national game of the week, and they want Mike Golick to be the analyst, and they want me to be the play-by-play announcer. And I'm saying, you guys are crazy. You could have any play-by-play announcer you wanted. Why would you have me? And so I say all of that because that's what I was doing when I got the call from NBC Philly about being the voice of the 76ers. I never in a zillion years thought that this franchise that has so much weight, not just in the United States, but in the world, it's one of those few franchises, I think, that you can say, and because of the history and the players that have come through here, that people would know exactly what they were. I think it has that weight as far as a brand is concerned. I didn't think they were going to hire a chick from California. And then it was week 4, I believe, of the college football season. I was in an airport getting ready to go to some random college football town and was getting ready to board my flight. And like you started the question with, I thought that they were calling to say, thank you so much for flying out here, for being a part of the audition process and interviewing. Wow, you've got a big future ahead. It's just not the right fit for us. Best of luck with your career. But instead, that was not the case. They said, we'd usually call your agent and let them know that we want you for this position, but it is such a big deal to us. And we're so excited about the possibility that we wanted to call you personally and let you know
Wow.
that you were incredible. All of us are so excited about the possibility of working together. And we would love for you to be the next voice of the Philadelphia 76ers. And I was just standing in some random airport. I pulled out a line. We were boarding the flight, and I couldn't believe it. I was really, truly in some kind of excited shock because I didn't think that any organization was going to have the balls to do that. And they did, and they do. And that has then begun this next year of my life. So I finished calling college football while moving across the country to Philly, while starting to call Sixers games. So it has been a wild couple of years. But yeah, now here we are.
That is such an incredible story, and one that you can't make up, one that you'll always have with you, right? Like, in an
Yeah,
airport on the way to another game, but it's just so
yeah.
good, and it says so much about the Sixers organization. That's something I
Mhm.
really like. 1, that they called you directly, 2, that they took a chance, not that it's a chance you have to take, but just that they did the thing, right? You said that they
Yeah.
had the balls. I really like that. Um, and then also just talking about the whirlwind of it all, there's so many things that go into this industry, whether you're a coach, an athlete, a reporter, the moving, the traveling,
Yeah. Yeah.
all of that.
All
Really
the things that
related.
nobody cares about because they think it's so cool, which it is, but then once you start doing it consistently, it just becomes an aspect of your job that's difficult, and you have to manage it so that nobody knows it's going on.
Yeah, I mean, how did you manage all of that?
Yeah, it was so much, and, calling football, which was at that point the biggest assignment of my career, and then in the midst of that, as I just mentioned, getting offered the then biggest opportunity of my career. It was incredibly stressful. I still remember I called a UCLA Stanford football game. Learfield was nice enough to know that I needed to move across the country. So they picked a Pac-12 game in the Bay. It just worked out that there was a
Yeah.
Pac-12 game in the Bay Area that weekend in the time slot because we were calling games at night on the East Coast. Called a game, drove an hour back to Oakland to my house, threw everything I had in 3 suitcases, a couple of carry-ons, or a couple of check bags and a carry-on. Flew to Philly, got there on Sunday night. Media day was the next day. I
Oh
was
my
living in a
gosh.
hotel and had to keep then calling football every Friday and Saturday, and then taking the first flight out of whatever random college town we were in on Sunday morning and getting back to Philly and trying to catch up on Sixer stuff and talking to my wife, who was 3 hours behind me in Oakland. Are we keeping our house? Are we selling our house? What are we doing? When are you coming out here? Do you want to stay in Oakland for the entire season? Should we try to make you come out here in the middle of the season? Just so many, again, I call them silly life things, even though they were huge life things. But nobody, no Sixers fan at the time, I don't think, cared about that. They just had somebody who was new, who was replacing a legend, who they wanted to be really good right from the start. And there were so many other things that I was having to deal with. Um, in addition to that, I mean, I moved 5 times during the season. I spent a week in a hotel and then temporary housing and then an Airbnb. And then my wife and pup did move out in mid-January. Then we moved to a place where there could be a dog. Um, every day we had off from January until the end of the season, we were looking for houses. So all those off days weren't really off
Yeah.
days. But anyway, I was really happy that I said that recently on a Sixers specific podcast. And the hosts reflected to me that even though we've only called a couple of games so far this season and in the preseason, that I sound so much more comfortable. And I was able to reflect to them, yeah, guys, let me tell you everything that was going on behind the scenes that, again, I know nobody cared about, but now I'm here. We're almost settled. I'm not calling college football this year. And I just get to focus on the Sixers, which is what I'm excited to do. And I know that I'm going to be such a better broadcaster this year because of it.
Well, you must have masked it really well, and that's part of, right, being on TV or on the radio.
Yeah.
It's you can't really have a bad day or a stressful day because you always have to be on, and that's something
Mhm.
I've even had trouble with, right? You can't really show your cards. You can't show what's going on
Yeah.
behind the scenes because it doesn't matter necessarily to everyone else, and you must have really had to deal with that in a tough way, but how nice to have a support system, and I think I saw a lot on your Instagram post too. Your wife is so supportive even when you're not together all the time. That takes a really strong partnership, I'm sure.
Yeah, and we've been together for 17 years now. We've been married for 14, and it was something I told her on the second date that this is what I want to do, and it's probably going to be suck
Yeah.
me. It's probably going to suck being married to me because it means I'm going to miss a lot of holidays and birthdays, and you're going to have to go to friends' weddings alone. And if you're on board, I think we'd have a lot of fun together. So it's so helpful to have a supportive spouse who understands. Doesn't mean she doesn't get upset with me and frustrated, and things aren't difficult at times because of how crazy my schedule has been in the past and is now. But yeah, it is one of the most fulfilling parts of this journey for me is that I get to share it with her. And then when it comes to supports, after rambling for so long, I think you were also talking about the crew here, the Sixers and NBC Sports Philadelphia. Uh, I couldn't have come into a better situation. And again, when you take a big job like this, you don't know. You're so excited about the opportunity and you try to vet the crew you're going to be working with as much as possible. But even if I was a little bit worried, would I have said yes? Probably, because it's the Philadelphia freaking 76ers. But the NBC crew who I work with, the Sixers who have been so open and have allowed me to come to shoot arounds and practices. And obviously, we're now traveling with the team. Since I got here last year, everybody has treated me as a broadcaster who happens to be a woman. And multiple people have pulled me aside early last year and said, we want you to know how happy we are to have you here. Not because you're
Aw.
different, but because you're great at what you do. And those side conversations have meant so much because that's how I'm hope to be seen in a few years. And I understand that for a lot of people, I'm still that other broadcaster, but I'm just going to keep putting in the work. And hopefully in a few years, it will just be, oh, yeah, Kate Scott, the voice of the Sixers. And that's it. But I know that I just have to keep putting in the work in order to get there.
Exactly, and it's because of people like you and because of the women you spoke about earlier that paved the way, right? That we're
Yeah.
on track to get there.
Yeah.
Talk to me a little bit more about the platform you have to be a role model to not only women in broadcast, but out women in broadcast or just in this world. You said you didn't see many women like you growing up. How special is it to have that platform and just to feel comfortable? You have such this confidence about you. Did you always have that?
um, my mom would tell you, yes, I have always had the confidence.
That's a good mom.
It is, and I, for the most part, would agree with her. I have just been very fortunate to have been very self-confident from an early age. And that's not to say that the confidence doesn't waver, and that I don't, like we referenced a few minutes ago, have to fake it from time to time. I definitely had to fake it at times last fall because the negative feedback to my hiring and my work at the start here last fall in Philly was very loud. And as much as you try to ignore things, whether you're a broadcaster or an athlete, whoever you are, when you're a public facing figure, it can sometimes get overwhelming and difficult. And I found it impacting my confidence. But yes, I have somehow, some way had that confidence, and it's so helps me, as has, we talked about some of my early career, and this is something I always try to get across to people who are coming into this industry as well. Every job, even if you don't understand how it's going to help you, and it may just be a little thing, but I worked in morning radio for 6 years at KNBR. That was my first big sports job, as I mentioned, after the traffic reporting. It was the Giants and 49ers and Golden State Warriors flagship station. And I was on from 5 a.m. to noon. And it was a really long shift doing the
Yeah.
updates and also getting to chime in. The guys were fantastic. I worked with 2 different shows, and I wouldn't be here if it wasn't for the exposure and the confidence and so many things that job taught me. But one of the things when it comes to never showing people that you're having an off day and always coming across as confident. A couple weeks in, sat down with the hosts and our program director, and they played back some of my updates. And I said, wow, I sound so monotone. I thought I was so enthusiastic and kind of sounding over the top in my head. And they said, that's one of the things about morning radio, Kate. It's 5:15 in the morning. So you think you're giving a lot of energy, but you've got to give even more to sound awake and engaged and in it. And that was a great lesson for me, because everybody has those days where you wake up and the last thing you want to do is get out of bed, let alone be on live radio for
Yeah.
8 hours. So from that, I learned how to compartmentalize life, how to always sound like you're into it, like you know everything about the game the night before, like nothing's going wrong or is overwhelming in your personal life. And I have taken that all these years later into my current position, because you're not going to be confident every single broadcast for whatever reason. You're not going to be fully rested and ready to go and excited about it, because life happens behind the scenes. But another roundabout answer, I have been lucky to have that confidence, and it has been a huge positive and benefit, because I don't think I would be here without it, because there's a lot of noise in this industry still telling others that we don't belong. And I just try to keep, like I said, putting my head down and working, because when it comes to being a role model, when it comes to being somebody that either the next generation, like you were looking at as inspiration and motivation, or whether it's the people who are doing the hiring and are slowly starting to consider hiring people who may not look and sound like the people they've hired in the past. I know that there's a lot of eyes and ears on what I'm doing. And I know that talking about it helps, even though it's awkward for me. That's why I'm a play-by-play announcer, because I like talking about other people and telling their stories. I don't like talking about myself, but I know that that's important, sharing my story. But I know the most important thing is doing my job and doing it really, really well, so that what I mentioned a couple minutes ago, just being considered a broadcaster who's prepared and great at what they do, that is going to open the doors for everybody. And that's what I'm going to consider a successful career, hopefully, once I'm done.
You're offering so much advice, even if you don't realize it. Is there anyone who's offered?
I just feel like I'm rambling.
Yeah, no. I mean, you could like write a book right now. Is there anyone who's offered you really great advice that you stand by or that you carry with you?
Oh, gosh, so many people. I mean, I have it in the signature of my email because I'm lame like that. A friend of mine calls me a walking motivational magnet, and she says that in a teasing way, like she's truly making fun of me. But she also knows that's who I am. I'm not putting on.
Yeah.
But it was just a phrase that an English teacher in high school had up in the room, and it's little by little, one walks far. It's a Peruvian proverb, which came to mean even more to me when I was in Peru a number of years ago, hiking Machu Picchu with my wife, and realized that you just have to put one foot in front of the other. And that has been my career. I think the Americanized version of that is there's no elevator to success. You have to take the stairs. And obviously everybody's journey is different. And I hope that you and the next generation, because of how long and difficult my journey has been, have it easier. I hope that you do have an elevator a couple of floors, but that may not be the case. And so just I tell the kids I mentor now, I have to remind myself just one foot in front of the other. I had no idea how producing radio traffic was going to lead to me being the television voice of the Philadelphia 76ers, but here we are because I kept putting in the work. So that's one thing. One of my mentors of the Pac-12 network, who I consider kind of raising me, Mary Murphy, who's an incredible basketball analyst who I worked with for years. Before the NHL game that I called, I'm in Vegas doing sideline for the Pac-12 women's basketball tournament. I'm going to fly to Chicago to call the game and then come back and do sideline for the men's basketball tournament the next week. And I'm looking down at my hockey boards, prepping like crazy. And again, so simple. She said, Kate, promise me one thing when you get to Chicago. She said, just look up and call the game. You know everything that's down here. Just start trusting yourself because you are a great play-by-play announcer. And I know that you're so concerned with the stats and the numbers because you feel like as a woman and as an outsider, you have to keep proving yourself. And she said, just stop. You know it all. It's all up here. Just look up and call the hockey game. So I try to remind myself of that in big moments now for the Sixers. Yes, that stat may be really cool, but just nail the call. Just call the game. So yeah, those are the main things. And then what I try to say to everybody is, it's again so simple, but just be kind to people because this industry and every industry are so small,
Oh, yeah.
and everybody talks to everybody. And there, in my opinion, there is a hierarchy, but in reality, there's not because the people who do the hiring are going to talk to the people who are running cord at sideline at a
Yeah,
football game saying, how was that sideline reporter Kate Scott? Did she treat you as an equal? Was she nice to you? When I have gone in to have meetings with big bosses, you always say hello and how are you to the executive assistant. They used to be known as secretaries, but
right.
after every meeting the boss is going to say, hey, was Kate Scott nice to you or was she a jerk? Did she act like she was better than you? And I try to tell that to people in every industry. We're all just human beings and we're
Mhm.
in our positions. Some of us, that's where we want to be. Some of us, it's not. Some of us have big dreams. Some of us are happy. There's so many different things that go into it. But that was one of the things that was recently reflected to me about getting this job in Philly, right? It's crazy to think about that, but they obviously vetted me in addition to
Yep.
listening to all of my calls at the Olympics and for the Pac-12 and the WCC and all the things I've done basketball wise. They said, we want you to know that you have a fantastic reputation in this industry. And we reached out to a lot of your former employers, and all of them told us, man, who she is on the air is exactly who she is off of it. She's energetic and so much fun and always tries to improve the team. And she is a joy to work with. And that means so much to me because that's who I try to be. So the fact that I am seen in that way by the people that have helped me get here, that just means more than I can even put into words.
That's huge. I think that's one of the things I've learned is to act, not act, but be who you are on air and off. And like you
Yeah.
said, to kill them with kindness is something you can live by in work and in just life in general. It's so much easier, right? Just to be
Yeah, and some
kind.
days you do have to act. Getting back to what we've been
Yeah,
talking about already, some
yeah,
days you just wanna throw your microphone at the wall because you're not happy with your performance or something's going wrong in audio or something's going wrong at home. There's so many things that can impact our performance, but to just sometimes act and remember how lucky
yeah.
we are to be doing what we do and just go back to that kindness.
Totally. You, before I let you go, because Kate is very busy woman and she has a lot to do. But I would want to get to some fun stuff. You mentioned you have
Okay.
lots to do too. That's a big deal. Do you and your wife like to travel? What are some of your hobbies and when you do have downtime? Because I know there's not much.
Yeah. Well, hopefully we'll be traveling soon because now, thanks to this incredible job, I actually get an off season for the first time
Amazing.
in ever. So I'm hoping to, again, for her compromise and sacrifice over the past almost 20 years now, hoping to take the wife on a number of great vacations over the summers to come. But yeah, we love being outside, which is one of the reasons we're so excited to be here in Pennsylvania. I mean, I'm looking out my window right now, and the colors are changing, and they're beautiful. And we have
Best.
so many incredible parks where you can go hiking around here. Obviously, Piper, who wanted to announce herself at the very beginning of the
Thank you,
podcast,
Piper.
has now just been snoring to my side the entire time. Just love being with the dog. You know, got her a couple years ago because I'm a workaholic, obviously, and I wanted something to get me off my butt and away from my computer
Yep.
and outside, and also just having another responsibility. It's great to have something else to care about, as everybody who has kids knows. That's a little bit too much for me. I'm just going to stick with the dog, but and just spending time with the people I love. You know, my parents were just here for the first time ever. I
Love
hadn't seen them in
that.
14 months because of the craziness of football and here and moving and everything. And that just, I think when you work in a job that is as all encompassing and stressful as the one that I have, just little moments with people who've known you for a long time, who know who you are off the air, who've seen the grind. Those moments fill me up, and it's going to fill me up for a long time. So those are little things, and hopefully get back to reading and working out and all those things that I've been telling myself I'm going to do again for 8 months. But then I just flip on NBA League Pass and watch somebody else's games. So
Yeah, I mean,
hopefully
that's
some more
part of the
relaxing things
job.
soon.
You're
Exactly,
studying, you're
exactly.
studying. That's really special about your parents. That's
Yeah.
really, really neat. Do you is there a place besides Philly? Because if we have any
Mhm.
Sixers people that listen, you know, that's gonna be your best place to watch a game. Is there a place that is the best, home atmosphere you've been to?
Oh gosh. Hmm. I mean, this will be tough because I haven't been to actually a lot of the places yet because we didn't start traveling
Oh,
until February
okay, so
of
we
last
might have
year.
to follow up with that
We'll
next
we'll
year.
follow up, but, you
Okay.
know, as somebody who grew up in the '80s when the Bulls were getting good into the '90s, getting to call a Sixers-Bulls game at the United Center on the floor, especially because that's where I had called the NHL game the year prior, that was a pretty special moment getting to be in this arena that had changed my life, I know, the year prior when there was ice where the hardwood
Yeah.
was. Um, and then getting to call this game again between two incredible franchises. That was a really cool moment last year. But haven't gotten to call a game in Boston or in New York yet. Haven't gotten to call a game back where I was for the last 20 years in the Bay Area at the Chase Center. So I imagine in March of this year when the Sixers go visit the Warriors and I get to think, wow, I called a game on the radio here a couple of years ago, and now I'm here as the voice of the Sixers. I think that's going to be pretty cool. So again, there's just pinch me moments all the time. And that's one of the things I love about Allah, who's my partner, is that he played in the NBA for 10 years. He's been
Yeah.
doing this. I think this is his sixth or seventh year, but he still has that too. So before almost every broadcast, we look at each other and we're like kids at an NBA game. Like, how lucky are we? Dude, we're getting paid to be here. How awesome is this? And getting to share that energy I think is a great foundation for our broadcast. And I think it's why a lot of people have again reflected to us that it sounds like we're having just a blast when we call the games. And that's what I hope to do every night.
So cool. Is there something you do before a game, whether it's like getting ready wise or uh, mantra you tell yourself? Is there
Yeah.
any part of your routine that you always do?
Um, one serious and one fun.
Love it.
Um, but at some point, usually when I go to the restroom and I'm putting on my my lipstick and spraying my hair or something, I just remind myself, you're supposed to be here. Because again, Lisa was hired by the Bucks last
Mhm.
year. So there's two of us women. There's a few black men. Adam Amin is the voice
Yeah.
of the Bulls. So there's a few of us non-white men, but there's not very many of us. So there's still a lot of things that tell me I shouldn't be here and shouldn't be doing this. So I like to remind myself, you're supposed to be here. You earn this. So go out and crush it for yourself and for everybody who came before you and everybody who wants to do this, who's going to come after you. And then in talk back, usually right before the broadcast, which is the button you push that just goes to the truck or the control room. You can't be heard over the air. Something I've been doing for a long time. A producer, Jeff Butler, back at the Pac-12 Network, said it to me years ago, and it cracked me up. So before every broadcast, just hey guys, let's have a blast. Let's try not to suck. And it's just
I
a
love
great way to
that.
It's a great way to just lighten the mood and remind us, like, this isn't brain surgery.
Mm.
Nobody's hopefully gonna die if we make a mistake. So just have a blast and try not to suck. And usually anything above that, you lower the expectations, so then it's easier to have a great broadcast when you start that way.
I love it. We have to let you go prep for a Sixers game. You've got the home
I
opener
guess. Yep.
this week, which will be done by the time this airs. But this has been such a blast, and there's been so many like goosebump moments for me because, like you said, you're full of so many wonderful quotes, and I can't wait to share them. Where can everyone find you?
I'm on Twitter and Instagram, same handle, Kate, the letter T, and then Scott, because I was too slow on getting handles. So somebody took the original Kate Scott. So I'm Kate T. Scott. And I'd love to chat with you all. And thank you so much for having me here today and let me ramble. And hopefully there was something in there that you can take away. But I'm so grateful and lucky to be here. But it took a lot of hard work and a lot of kindness. And I'm so happy that we got to chat today because of it.
I am so appreciative that we were able to get the scoop with you, Kate Scott, and I'm so excited to share this with everyone. Thank you, and thanks for being so open and kind. Your kindness will not be forgotten. So thank you so much, and we really appreciate you.
Thank
Um,
you. Thank you. And we have to end every podcast by saying, go Sixers.
Go Sixers!